Well, hello there. How are you doing today? Good? Good. Welcome to Kez Vlogs Daily, where Kez Vlogs Daily? Shocker, I know. But today I want to take you on a journey, but not just any journey. This is a true adventure, a story of revolution, death, politics, and civil war. Sound good? Awesome. But first, we need to go back and get a little context. You ready? Okay. So, try and take your mind back to the ancient time of June the 8th, 2020. Feels like a lifetime ago, right? Because a lot can happen in a few months. But we're in Seattle, Washington, a seaport city on the west coast of the United States. Seattle is the largest city in both the state of Washington and the Pacific Northwest region of North America, boasting nearly 400 million citizens, making it the 15th largest in the whole of the US. The world had just lost George Floyd, RIP, on the 26th of May due to police brutality, and as a result, protests ensued. The spirit of revolution was in full swing. Not only the States, but much of the rest of the world was also dealing with increased civil unrest. Around 2,000 cities and towns globally. Estimates put anywhere from 15 to 26 million individuals participated in protests. Just the USA alone, the largest in USA's history. So it's safe to say that this was a big deal. So, enter BLM, or the Black Lives Matter movement. Although BLM's first inception was way back in 2013 after the Zimmerman case, the movement really started to gain traction in the years to come. Ultimately, Floyd's death signified a turning point for a lot of otherwise average Americans to get behind the movement. It was at this time BLM really hit the big screen and turned into a global movement. No longer was it made up of just radicals and freedom fighters, now the average citizen even felt enough was enough and something needed to change. In 2018, public opinion was mostly negative, but by June 2020, just 2 short years later, the public opinion had shifted to Americans overwhelmingly supporting BLM. It was officially a big deal by this point. Okay, so that's out of the way. Let the real story start. I introduce you to the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ, also known as the Free Capitol Hill, the Capitol Hill Occupied Protest, or the Capitol Hill Organised Protest, or CHOP. CHOP was an occupation protest and self-declared autonomous zone in the Capitol Hill neighbourhood of Seattle, Washington, United States. Autonomous zone just means it's no longer under government control. So the zone originally covered 6 city blocks of the park, was established on the 8th of June 2020 by George Floyd protesters after the Seattle Police Department left its East Precinct building. Yep, they literally kicked the police out. The zone was a self-organising space without official leadership. Although a leader would be established, that wasn't due to any votes or anything, he basically just made himself a leader, but we'll get to that a bit later. The protests united around 3 main demands. Number 1, to cut Seattle's $400 million police budget by 50%. Number 2, to shift funding to community programs and services in historically black communities. And number 3, ensure that protesters would not be charged with crimes. Within the first few days of formation, activity in the area has rapidly expanded into a number of directions, including the arts, music, dialogue and resource exchange. Participants created a block-long Black Lives Matter mural, provided free film screenings in the open street and performed live music. A no-cop co-op was formed, brimming with food, hand sanitizer and supplies. Areas were set up to serve expansion of free speech and to facilitate discourse, and including the construction of a community vegetable garden. So, the zone was initially centred around the East Precinct building, where the police basically got sort of kicked out of there, and barriers were set up on Pine Street for several blocks in order to prevent traffic from passing. The early territory reportedly encompassed 5.5 city blocks, including the public park. It stretched north to East Denny Way, east to 12th Avenue and partially 13th Avenue, south to East Pike and west to Broadway. Cal Anderson Park was active with demonstrators also. Protesters used roadblocks, blockades and fences to construct sort of like staggered barricades at intersections. One entrance at the zone's territory was marked by a barrier reading "You are entering Free Capitol Hill" on June the 9th. Other signs declared "You are now leaving the USA." The signage on the police station was modified as protesters rebranded it the Seattle People's Department East Precinct, amid graffiti with anarchist symbols, according to one report. But you can see there's like all sorts of graffiti and people were pretty much just drawing dicks everywhere. So, yeah, each to their own, I guess. But protesters established a no-cop co-op on June the 9th, 2020, offering free water, hand sanitizer and snacks donated by the community. Along with kebabs, stalls were set up which offered cuisine such as vegan curry, while others collected donations for the homeless. Organisers pitched tents next to the former precinct in order to hold the space, and 2 medical stations were established in the zone to deliver basic healthcare. The SDOT provided portable toilets. The city provided services to the area, including waste removal, portable toilets, and fire and rescue services. The SPD also stated that they responded to 911 calls within the area, but I'm not too sure about that one. The King County Public Health Department provided COVID-19 testing in Cal Anderson Park for a period of time during the protests. I mean, to start off with, it really looked like there was some direction and goal, and it was looking, I guess, hopeful for the first 24 hours, but there was no leadership. So, this is about the time I must introduce you to our de facto leader, or warlord, as he's been reported as, called Raz Simone. Raz Simone, I believe. Sorry about that, Raz, don't shoot me. Raz was born in January 1990, and he was also known mainly when he claimed his place in the hip-hop scene around 2015 and got his music big through the website SoundCloud, making a little cheddar in the process. And basically his money and influence made him the perfect person to lead this movement, or I guess at least he thought, actively handing out guns to pretty much anyone within CHAZ that asked him, with little regard for laws or safety, not even going as far to check if the people he was arming was competent and capable of using the gun to protect, rather than to murder and harass people with different narratives. And it didn't take long for people to start arguing with each other and fighting amongst themselves, and fight they did. In the early morning hours of June the 20th, 2 people were shot in separate incidents in the Capitol Hill neighbourhood at the edge of the protest zone. It was unclear if the shootings were connected to the protests, but it happened within the zone, so, you know. Emergency dispatchers received the first reports of gunshots at 10th Avenue and East Pine Street at 2:19 a.m. in the morning. A 19-year-old black man, Anderson Jr., was transported to Harbourview Medical Centre with multiple gunshot wounds by volunteer medics, but unfortunately he was pronounced dead shortly afterwards at the hospital at 2:53. So rest in peace to that young man, because that's a bit of a shame. He was a local rapper known as Little Mob, and Anderson had graduated from high school just the day before, so honestly really sad. Rest in peace, man. There was also a second victim, 33-year-old Young, who was found by a former nurse, along with the help of a volunteer medic. It determined that he had 2 gunshot wounds. Young reported that he went to leave after the hearing. The first shooting was surrounded by a group of men, called a racist term and shot repeatedly while at 11th and Pike. He was transported to Harbourview by 3:06 a.m. and was in critical condition the following day. KIRO-TV reported that Young was shot by different people a block away from where Anderson was mortally wounded. Young said, "I was shot by, I'm not sure if they were Proud Boys or KKK, but the verbiage that they said was, 'Hold this N-word,' and shot me." He expressed concern that the case was not being properly investigated due to the perception that the protesters had asked for police not to be there, so don't act like y'all need them now. However, Young was outside the zone during this shooting. "I was in Seattle streets," he said, "so what's the excuse now?" Armed police eventually entered the zone in riot gear, but was informed by protesters the victim left the premises, so no suspects were in custody and no motive had been determined. Another shooting occurred on the 21st of June, just one day after the first shooting. The second such incident in the zone is in less than 48 hours. After being transported in a private vehicle to Harbourview Medical Centre, a 17-year-old male was treated for a gunshot wound to the arm and released. He also declined to speak with SPD detectives. On the 22nd of June, so yet another day later, Mayor Durkin said the violence was distracting from the message of thousands of peaceful protesters. "We cannot let the act of violence define the movement for change," she said, adding that the city will not allow for gun violence to continue in the evenings around Capitol Hill. The mayor announced that officials are working in the community to bring the zone to an end. It's time for people to go home, she said, to restore order and eliminate the violence on Capitol Hill. And honestly, by this point, I totally do agree. Like, it probably started with good intentions, but I mean, like 3 people have been shot in like a few days, so, At the same press conference, Police Chief Best spoke of groups of individuals engaging in shootings, a rape, assault, burglary, arson, and property destruction. She added, "I cannot stand by, not another second, and watch another black man, or anyone really, die in our streets whilst people aggressively thwart the efforts of police and other first responders from rescuing them." On June the 23rd, so a couple of days later this one, there was a third shooting near the zone, leaving a man in his 30s with wounds that were not life-threatening. SPD was reportedly investigating, but the victim refused to provide information about the attack or describe a suspect. So, you think it's over? A fourth shooting in the vicinity of the zone occurred in the early morning hours of June 29th. Is anyone starting to see the problem yet? A 16-year-old African-American male named Antonio Mays Jr. was killed, and a 14-year-old male was in critical condition with gunshot injuries. Mays was a resident of San Diego, California, and reportedly left home for Seattle a week earlier. In videos from that night, a series of 12 to 13 gunshots can be heard at approximately 2:54 a.m, just before a voice yells warnings of multiple vehicles, multiple shooters, and a stolen white Jeep. As protesters scramble into position, this is followed by a 5-minute lull before another 18 gunshots can be heard as the white Jeep crashes into a barricade or portable toilet. While searching for evidence, SPD discovered that the crime scene had been disturbed. Police had also made no arrests in any of the shootings at CHOP since June the 20th. According to Marty Jackson, a volunteer medic who witnessed the event, CHOP security forces shot at an SUV that the teenagers crashed into a concrete barrier. So it's safe to say that it got chaotic. The defacto leader Raz Simone was seen abusing his power multiple times, abusing people that record his terrible deeds and trying to silence anyone who opposes him. Conservative news outlets and publications including Fox News, Town Hall, New York Post and City Journal featured Simone prominently in their coverage of the zone, characterising him as a warlord, policing the area with an AK-47 and highlighting an interaction where he allegedly assaulted a tagger. He even went on CNN to engage in dialogue, and here's a little clip because it's pretty cool.
You've become a de facto leader of this autonomous zone. I know some people some media outlets have described you as a warlord, which I know you take issue with that description. I wonder if you can talk to us about, after what we saw last weekend, there were some shootings, and now the mayor is saying it's time for people to go home. I wonder, Raz, is someone who's very involved, is a leader, if the not leader of this zone, how is that going to play out? Are people going to leave?
I think a lot of people are going to leave. A lot of people already left. I haven't been in there. I just have eyes on the ground and people that are trying to make sure that people are safe. It's one of those things that's frustrating because that area is already a hot spot for issues. There have been multiple shootings in that area on that block already, just in the history of in the last decade or whatever. So that's already a place of activity. That's where all the bars, everyone leaves the bars and congregates in this area already. So to attribute it all to CHAZ is not fair. But at the same time, the protesters of CHAZ have targets on their back, and that is an issue.
So, just like any large gathering, it takes an immense amount of preparation and organisation. Something that the CHAZ protesters didn't really have, and ultimately led to the inevitable crumble that ensued. Food was getting scarce, people were getting bored, and the police and state were also getting increasingly aggravated with them. After multiple failed talks between the SPD and CHAZ, it didn't really look like anything positive was going to come from the whole ordeal. To me at least. And it really could have. It really could have if it sort of just been executed properly and thought about a little bit. But this brings me to my own personal opinion of the whole matter. I typically try to keep my opinions out of sort of videos. I don't really have strong political views, or at least not enough to sort of want to argue with people over it and let it rule my life. I agree, things need to change. The socio-economic climate that we're in is volatile at best. I agree Black Lives Matter. All life does it all, and I also totally agree with people's right to protest. It's a very valuable and effective catalyst for change, but it can also serve as a grim reminder. A reminder that rules are there to create order and safety. The efficacy today is sometimes debatable, but as current system has served us well for a long time, just maybe we've evolved but the rules haven't. It's a very intricate system with many variables, but I'm definitely not the person to lead. I know it's not as easy as it seems when you're arguing with someone in the comments section. But after the fourth shooting in such a short period of time, Mayor Jenny Durkin called the situation dangerous and unacceptable, which I sort of have to agree. SPD Chief Best told reporters enough is enough, we need to be able to get back into the areas. Then, on July the 1st, 2020, after the mayor issued an executive order, Seattle police cleared the area of protesters and reclaimed the East Precinct Station. Protests did continue in the streets of Seattle in the days following the closure of the zone, but the main attraction had been closed down indefinitely. I have to say, I think it was a very valiant effort to say the least, and if nothing else, it exemplified the power of a unified public, and that's not something we should forget anytime soon. It's super unfortunate that it turned out the way it did. I honestly believe there was a lot of great people out there trying to spread a very important message that people do need to hear. But due to the many negatives throughout the protest, the positives were just drowned out and the message was lost. I do think we need a revolution. I just don't know if humanity is ready for that responsibility just yet. And honestly, that's a shame. Oh yeah, remember that warlord we spoke about? He got arrested and cried. Man, real men cry for sure, but I didn't think warlords did. So that's going to be a wrap up for this one. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. I've put a lot more time and effort into this video. I hope it shows. Consider subbing the channel. It would genuinely mean the world to me. I'm trying to improve every day and every video, so, just stay tuned. But that's it for today, and I hope you have a great day, guys. Peace!